The global economy is yet again facing another threat, and this time it involves the Red Sea. The Suez Canal, which is one of the most important routes of transport for the import and export of products, is being avoided by shipping companies. Stick with us till the end of the video to find out more on this subject. But before we begin, make sure you like and subscribe to never miss out on more interesting content. There has been a lot of fuss regarding the Panama Canal and the Suez Canal as of today. But what exactly is it that is happening so much to influence the world in such a manner? That's exactly what we're going to go into detail about. There's an ongoing wave of attacks by the Red Sea against merchant ships. It is this awaiting danger that is causing shipping companies to choose different alternative routes and avoid any unfortunate events. These companies would rather have their ships take more lengthy and difficult routes to reach their destination than to have to face the attacks caused by the Red Sea, which of course makes sense for the companies. This is an issue that the global economy does not need at this moment, when it's already so fragile and vulnerable. Now, let's get into more detail about what's actually going on there. This takes us all the way back to an armed group called the Houthis. The Houthis, which is an Iranian armed group, is mostly in charge of Yemen, the northern part of Yemen to be exact. This group has been causing immense havoc and chaos for ships by firing even missiles at them. Why are they doing so? This has been an outcome of the Israeli attack that took place last year in the first week of October. This is most of the backstory that you'll need to know to understand why ships have been avoiding the much used and traveled Suez Canal. So now that the most convenient route has been blocked due to these dangerous events, how does this affect the global economy? This change in trade routes or travel routes for ships is super unfortunate, and we cannot help but imagine how high prices of importing goods and exporting goods could surge up because of this. The Suez, especially when it came to the transport of fuel tankers and cargo ships, was always the most crucial route of travel. It has been a route since the 1800s for imports from the Middle Eastern nations to European countries and even to America. This canal was given so much importance that several nations even went to war against each other so that they can gain possession of it and have an upper hand on the trades and transports through the canal. Now in the hands of the nation of Egypt, from at least 10 decades ago, the canal is once again in a state of terror and threat. And if that wasn't enough to give you a gist of the importance of this canal, you'd be surprised to know how many ships pass through the Suez Canal every single day. Approximately 50 maritime vessels are known to pass through the Suez Canal on a daily basis. And that definitely isn't a small number. But as of now, more than half of these ships have been made to switch routes. The observation was made by Chris Rogers, who is in fact the head of supply chain research at S&P Global Market Intelligence. Chris took notice of how this canal was crucial for transporting goods from Europe to Asia, and that 15% of the imports were transported through the Persian Gulf via the Suez Canal. Some other companies who performed a detailed study on the catastrophe occurring at the Suez described these events as a slow-burning disaster, all of which commenced just over a weekend. This blockage of the Suez has created so much ruckus during imports and exports that some traders do not even have a proper idea of where their goods are headed and if they will ever make it to their destination at all. Right after when the American warships brought down nearly 20 drones of the opposing party, the whole nation was shaken, and so were other countries as well. But of course, the US Defense Force has woken up from its slumber and decided to take action against the happenings involving the canal. They have come up with the idea of releasing a new multinational force, including countries such as the United States, Britain, Bahrain, Canada, and even France. This multinational force is going to be launched, and this force is going to be put together for the sole purpose of jointly addressing security challenges in the southern Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. Basically, the main principle this team follows is to ensure freedom of navigation, not just for the US, but for all countries, and strengthen regional security and prosperity. Even though companies made the decision to find alternatives for trade, as when the ships from the company Maersk was attacked a week ago, it was only a couple days ago that yet another oil company decided to suspend shipments via the Suez Canal, as they knew the question of security in that case was almost non-existent. The Maersk company, after their tragedy, definitely did not want to take any more chances and lose any more ships, and they found another route through Africa, which promised them a lot more safety. This way, they made sure that the crew would not have to be afraid about their safety, and neither would there be any loss of any vessels or cargoes or the products that are on board. What's even more interesting is that the Suez was believed to be the fastest and most convenient route only until the route via Africa was discovered. Contradictory to former beliefs, the route around Africa is almost as fast and convenient as the Suez. It's so unfortunate how exactly when the Panama Canal is facing inconveniences due to the drought, and the Suez Canal is going through its own set of problems. Nearly 12% of the world's trade is either dealt by the Suez Canal, or while the Panama Canal is 5%. And though these may seem like small numbers, that's clearly not the case. It's a whole chunk of the economy of the globe. You wouldn't believe the extra amount of money that has to be spent on fueling ships and the longer routes avoiding the Panama and Suez Canal. Millions more are being spent, sometimes even more than that. This canal via Africa, the Cape of Good Hope, though maybe considered the fastest alternative, isn't exactly as fast as it sounds to be. Though when compared to the remaining routes of the world, it may seem fast, as it adds approximately 3,300 more miles to a normal journey the ships have to travel. This means another $1 million is spent for the expense of fueling the ship. With inflation situation going on in Europe and the United States, and some of the current issues are causing concerns on how it might affect the situation. The oil prices have skyrocketed to unbelievable prices already with the ongoing attacks. There is an inevitable amount of pressure felt not only by the US, but also by other nations of the world to finally come forth and put an end to the chaos and misery. The attacks just have to stop. The Houthis need to put an end to it in any way possible. It has come to a point to where the executives in the field of shipping are starting to resort to force to solve the situation, as no alternatives have been helping. According to them, this might be the only way transports via the Suez Canal may not be permanently stopped, as that is not something that the global economy is prepared to handle. It was only a couple years ago when the Suez Canal faced yet another supply chain crisis. Back then, one of the largest container ships carrying cargo and products literally got stuck in the middle of the canal. Yes, the ship remained there for days, blocking the canal, causing tragic misfortune for the other ships that were supposed to take the route. And what's even worse is that these events took place during the tragic period of the COVID pandemic. And as we all remember, it was during that pandemic that we desperately needed more and more supplies and produce, as the world was in utter disorder during that time. Thankfully, the demand for goods isn't as severe as it was back in those sad times. So one good thing that we can say is that the attacks aren't as bad as the blockage of the Suez back then, but it's still very bad for the global economy. The only issue here is that when Panama chose the Suez to transport its goods due to its own problems, the Suez cannot be of any help as it's dealing with its own fair share of issues. Sadly, the Panama Canal situation won't be over anytime soon. The Panama Canal, unlike the Suez Canal, uses locks and raises and lowers ships that move from one ocean to the other, and as a result of reduced rainfall, there is little water to fill the locks. The Panama Canal Authority has restricted the number of ships per day, and that number is expected to drop further when the dry season commences. I guess a solution to this entire situation is yet to be discovered. But that's all for today's video, folks. What are your opinions on the current situation? Feel free to let us know in the comments down below. And on the page of ship routes, do you know that the largest ship in the world has a giant problem? Be sure to watch this video to find out now, and of course, we'll see you in the next one.